many of my clients go to the bank and they have, 10, $20 million worth of Bitcoin, and they want to buy the house that they want because they're having a second baby and they need a bigger place. And the bank says, where is your income? Where's your tax filings? And their tax filings will show that because they are, you know, self-employed, they don't have the reported
The
income.
revenue stream, yeah.
Keep in mind, all of my friends are leaving. They're liquidating all of their assets. Everyone's depressed. People are crying. They've had to move. They've seen their life's work disappear, and their friends and the political allies are getting jailed. So everybody's looking for the way out. It was depressing. Yet along comes my youngest brother. Smile ear to ear. We, in the most hostile economic environment and political environment in the planet, can use this asset to sell it for the fair exchange rate and to use the same banking rails through P2P or centralized services to get the money we want, keep our hard good money, and to sell it for crappy money when we need to pay for things. When I saw that Bitcoin allowed us in Venezuela to do that, from that moment on, I haven't been able to stop thinking about this.
Hi, Mauricio. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jad. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining the show. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes. So my name is Mauricio Di Bartolomeo. I am the co-founder and chief sales officer here at Ledn. I am originally from Venezuela, which is where I found Bitcoin. My family found Bitcoin back in late 2014, early 2015, and they started mining it as a way of obtaining hard money in an environment where obviously everything was hyperinflating, and it was a very authoritarian regime.
And now, where are you based?
I'm based today in Georgetown, Cayman Islands. After spending many, many years in Canada, I've moved down here earlier this year with my family, and our business is actually our global headquarters are set up here in Georgetown. So that's where I'm based today.
Wow, Cayman Islands. That must be a really nice place to
It
live.
is. It's a very beautiful place to live, and it has a thriving crypto and Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, I know that Real Vision is based there, right?
I was just chatting with Ral yesterday. We're going to get together in a little bit, but yeah, Ral and I and many others in this space are pretty close. It's a small island, 60,000 people, but the quality of the 60,000 people is what's so amazing. Everybody here is a very interesting person, to say the least, and many people are here because their businesses are successful and they're able to basically manage. It's a really great place to run a global business, in particular a sort of virtual or online business. This is a phenomenal place to do that, and it's a financial hub. So lots of people in fintech, lots of people in Bitcoin and crypto, and others building super interesting stuff. So it's a pleasure. Really, I've really enjoyed my time here so far.
Okay, interesting. So I want you to start back from the beginnings of your Bitcoin journey, and then we go through Ledn and your business model and so on. So where you say that your family started mining Bitcoin from Venezuela, like you tick all the boxes of a Bitcoiner. So let's hear you out, like the full story.
So I have a bit of a different way into Bitcoin than most. I think everybody thinks of Bitcoin as freedom money, and many people that say that in a sort of theoretical point of view. They haven't actually had to practice the unstoppability of Bitcoin or the censorship resistance of Bitcoin. They haven't sort of lived through that in the flesh. Many Venezuelans, all of them, I would argue, have experienced what it's like to have your bank accounts vanished, as in the balances in your bank accounts disappear from one day to the other. The government bails in the bank and wipes out your deposits. I joke that Venezuela and Latin America, it's like the World Cup. One banking system collapses every 4 years. And so we have lots of experience, whether you're from Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil, Colombia. We've all had ourselves or someone in our lineage has had their entire life savings wiped off or expropriated by a random person that just got elected on a populist agenda. So we're very familiar with not having property rights, right? And what we need to do to survive. And when a government starts hyperinflating its currency, the one of the sort of more nefarious things that they do, as people stop ditching the currency in favor of dollars, in favor of gold, in favor of non-perishable goods, the government creates what's called a capital control, so a foreign currency exchange control, that forbids you from opting out of their debasing and collapsing currency, which is, I would argue, a criminal thing to do. But effectively, what happens is you go to your bank and the bank says, I'm sorry, I can't take your fiat. I can't sell you anything worthwhile. I can't sell you dollars. I can't sell you stocks. I can't sell you bonds. And what the government does is through this capital control, they create a fake exchange rate that they award only to their friends and their buddies to basically get rich, because it's a rate that is completely disconnected from the market. Anyway, so as this is happening, clearly what you want to do and everybody wants to do is get rid of your bolivares, which are basically melting. By the value of your currency halves. At the peak in Venezuela, the value of the currency was halving at approximately every 7 or 8 days. So just to give you a sense, you get paid on a Friday. If you don't get rid of it by Monday, you lost half of your work. So in Venezuela, I joke that you back then you had two jobs. It's still today. You have two jobs. You have your 9 to 5, and then when you get paid, your job is to get rid of it, and you have to go find something else to do with that money. So you start calling people frantically, and the first question is, do you have U.S. dollars? Right? Whether it's cash. Back then there were no stable coins, so you either took cash or you had to have a dollar bank account in the U.S., which only the very wealthy people did. So so if you had a bank account in the U.S. and you had a bank account in Venezuela, you could call and say, I have dollars in a bank account at J.P. Morgan or at Bank of America. So you would do the Bolivar leg in an interbank transaction in Venezuela, and then the dollar leg would happen in your offshore bank. Most likely U.S., Panama. There are many others, but this was very limited to the very wealthy who could, in fact, have bank accounts offshore. The rest of the people were stuck with cash. And US cash dollars in a currency controlled environment, an authoritarian regime, is incredibly risky for many reasons. One, they can be fake. Many people were walking around with their markers and their lights because there's the fake bills abound because they prey on people's despair. And the other one is, if any regime officer finds you with this cash, they will ask you for the government receipt, as in, what part of the government sold you this, because otherwise you bought it illegally, and they take it from you. So people are in a very desperate situation. And what was happening is nobody wanted to sell their dollars, rightfully so. And so people started buying cans of tuna, non-perishables, and trading tuna for chicken. Or they started buying tires, car tires, and trading the tire for flour. But the government then started saying, you can only get so many cans of tuna. You can only get so many bags of rice. You can only get so many.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. But that's what a communist authoritarian regime does. You cannot store value. They
up till what you have described, I had lived the same thing, because I'm originally from Lebanon. So there was, like, to a certain extent, a depreciation of the Lebanese lira, but not as fast as the Bolivar, and capital controls. Bitcoin was, of course, banned day one and all the things. But I didn't know it went like that far in Venezuela. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So Venezuela got thrown back in, like, centuries back in time, and we went back to the barter system. This is what happens when money breaks. When money breaks, you go back to bartering. That's how life was like before money existed. You had chicken, and you had to find someone that had flour. So you went around town and see who wants to trade flour for chicken. And it becomes a nightmare to do anything. So in this environment, this was early 2015, mid 2015 by this point. I was getting actually, well, I can, let's, I just want to give you the context of where my family finds Bitcoin. So you get paid, you start calling people and you say, do you have dollars? Do you have dollars? Everybody says, no, I'm not going to sell you my dollars. I don't have any dollars. You can't buy flour, you can't buy rice, you can't buy cans of tuna. So you call, the fourth broker you call says, I don't have dollars, but there's this thing called Bitcoin. And you could buy it, and you can sell it tomorrow $4. It's like buying dollars. You just have to do a couple more steps in a US, Bitcoin exchange. And people are like, I've never heard of this thing. And the broker says, hey, I had a couple guys that just bought it and they've been happy with it. They just sold it for dollars and they got what they wanted, even though they didn't have a bank account in the US. And people said, what? So, hey, you know what? I don't know what this is. I don't understand it, but the risk of not trying it is higher than the risk of trying it. So let's go. Give me this Bitcoin thing. What do I need? And they'll tell you, well, go get an address, go get a wallet, download an app or open an account at Coinbase or whatever, and give us an address so we can send you the Bitcoin. So the person goes, opens their account, sends the address, don't really not understanding what they're doing. They just send us these characters, this list of numbers and characters. And then they got, they send the Bolívares and then they got the little bit of Bitcoin. And they said, great, I can now sleep. It's Friday. I'm tired. I'll take care of selling this thing on Monday. I'll read some stuff over the weekend. So Monday would roll around. And the person on Friday had bought, $50 worth of Bitcoin. But when they went to the exchange on Monday, they saw that the $50 were now 55. And they said, in Venezuela, no one had seen, or virtually no one had seen things appreciate in US dollar terms. That broke people's minds because in Venezuela, all you had was, the wealthiest, you would just buy dollars.
Like the economy was getting worse and worse every year, so everything was depreciating in US dollars.
Well, in Bolívares and in US dollars, you have nominal depreciation and real depreciation. You have the two are happening at the same time. And Venezuela, you don't buy bonds and stocks. Like nobody in Venezuela owns Nvidia or Apple or any like that. Your most sophisticated investment is a US dollar, right? By the most part. And so you saw this thing that you bought it for dollars. It trades on a screen like a Bloomberg screen, like a Wall Street screen, that thing that, you feel like an investor. And then the thing goes up in dollar terms. And so the person says, what else do I have in my portfolio that's gone up in dollar terms? Absolutely nothing. And then they say to themselves, then why would I sell this thing? This is the best asset I've had. Why would I go out and sell the one thing that's appreciated? It's ridiculous. And so they said, oh, this is cool. I'm going to keep this in Bitcoin and I'm going to try to stockpile some more Bitcoin. So, and then they realized that the government can't take the Bitcoin away from them. They can keep it very conspicuously. They don't. The Bitcoin is the technology that allow us to carry an almost an insane amount of wealth can be held in a device this size. Doesn't even have to be a device. It can be held in here with you remembering your 12 words. So you or me could literally be transporting $10 billion in our heads and no one would know, right? That's the power of Bitcoin. And so when people realize all these benefits, they said, how do I get more? And it was around this time when my youngest brother, who had just graduated university, receives a phone call from one of his friends in Houston. And the friend in Houston had learned about Bitcoin and was trying to mine it. But in Houston, power, electricity was very expensive. Whereas in Venezuela, as you would know from Lebanon, many authoritarian communist governments, what they do is they subsidize things to make you feel like you're doing great, right? So they subsidize power, they subsidize water. And then obviously, then you got rolling blackouts. But let's not go there so far. Let's just say they highly subsidize things that shouldn't be to create an illusion that life is good. So in Venezuela, they were subsidizing energy. And a house of a 4-bedroom house with full blast AC in the middle of the Caribbean, you would be paying maybe 50 cents per month in power. It was
that's a huge subsidy. Okay,
it was it was as close to free as I've ever seen.
Like 100% subsidy. Okay, no, I was thinking basically, like maybe 10, 20%.
Oh no,
100%. The 99.9. Okay.
Chavez, $100 oil Chavez subsidies, I think, are undefeated. At a global level. It was outrageous. It was disgusting. But anyway. So this friend calls my brother and it says, hey, you should start mining this thing called Bitcoin. You guys have free power. This is the money of the future. Have you heard of it? And my youngest brother goes, no, never heard of this thing, but you're telling me it's got free power. I'm going to basically, pitch this to my family. Because my dad, we come from a very entrepreneurial family. And my dad wanted all of us, my two brothers and I, to start something when we came out of school. And he would support us. And this time was my youngest brother's turn. So my youngest brother tells my dad, I want to mine this thing called Bitcoin. My dad had never heard of it. So he sends me the white paper. I was living in Canada at the time. So I read the white paper, and I thought to myself, well, I mean, it wasn't like an aha moment like people think. It didn't happen then. I'll get there in a second. I read the white paper, and I think to myself, well, these miners are basically the bouncers of the network. They're the protectors of the network. And to protect themselves from bad actors trying to mess up with the ordering of things, they require a lot of energy. So that's why these machines, are specifically designed to hash as much as they can. And they do so by taking an immense amount of energy and the internet. And so the inputs I saw were energy, device, internet. And the output was this global asset that you could sell anywhere for dollars, hard money. And so I said, okay, subsidized inputs, an output that doesn't have to be sold in Venezuela. This is great. Go. So he starts mining. And that was summer of 2015, I believe. Yeah, summer of 2015. And I was still in Canada. By Christmas, I go back to visit my family. Keep in mind, all of my friends are leaving. They're liquidating all of their assets. Everyone's depressed. People are crying. They've had to move. They've seen their life's work get disappear, and their friends and the political allies are getting jailed. So everybody's looking for the way out. I get there, and every single one of my friends has long faces and is discussing where to go and who to sell this to. And I can't sell my house. I can't sell my car. I don't have a visa to go this way. I don't have a visa to go that way. It was depressing. Yet along comes my youngest brother, smile ear to ear, pep on his step, happy guy. And he sees me and he says, hey, Mao, if any of your friends are leaving and they're vacating any industrial property, let me know. I'm looking for some space to expand my business. And I'm just like, let's go see these mines. Where are these mines? So he takes me to these mines. And when I saw them, there were like 15 machines. He originally got enough money from my dad to buy, I think it was 5 or 7. So I go to my dad and I said, why did you give him more money? I thought this was a test. I thought these machines were, none of us knew about this stuff. What's going on? And he goes, oh, no. He repaid me. The extra machines are his. And so I went to my brother and I said, what are you doing? And he says, I'm mining Bitcoin. And he says, and I say, show me. And he says, give me your bank account. And then he shows me, at the time, the exchange was called Sur Bitcoin in Venezuela. Like many other Venezuelan Bitcoin entrepreneurs, the Sur Bitcoin guys are in jail today, unfortunately. But my brother uses the service, and then the money, and he sells the Bitcoin $4 at the real exchange rate, not the government fake exchange rate, the real rate. The money hits my bank account in less than an hour. And that was the moment, Jad, where I basically had my aha moment. I said, if we, in the most hostile economic environment and political environment in the planet, can use this asset to sell it for the fair exchange rate, and to use the same banking rails through P2P or centralized services to get the money we want, to get to keep our hard good money, and to sell it for crappy money when we need to pay for things. When I saw that Bitcoin allowed us in Venezuela to do that, from that moment on, I haven't been able to stop thinking about this. And that's when I quit everything I was doing, when I basically said to myself, I want to build on this in this industry. I started mining. Quickly, we, as other miners, realized that we have Bitcoin revenues and fiat expenses. And every time we sold our Bitcoin to pay for the fiat expenses, it was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So we decided to solve our own problem. And our own problem was, we wanted a loan that would take Bitcoin as collateral and give us the cash we needed to pay for our stuff and let us hold our Bitcoin for the long term.
And that's what Ledn does.
And that's what we built. So, in 2018, my business partner Adam and I set out with a very simple product, which was to give Canadians the opportunity to borrow dollars without selling the Bitcoin. And if we got that right in Canada, we could take that business model to the world. And that is indeed what happened. So Canada worked, it took off, and we started getting demand from people all over the world. And today we service 125 countries. We can get into the gist, but we've processed, we've raised over $100 million in capital. We've processed billions and billions of dollars in loans. So happy to get into sort of the Ledn piece, but
Yeah, I
that was
mean,
mine.
first of all, your personal story is quite amazing. So now let's get into the business story. So basically, the idea is simple. You just give loans backed by Bitcoin. I suppose. So how does it work? Basically, I send you my Bitcoin, and then you transfer me money to my bank account, and. If Bitcoin price drops a lot, you liquidate them. You must have like liquidation clauses, etc. How does it work?
Yeah, pretty much nailed it on that explanation. But it's a very simple product. I can lend to you 50% of the value of the Bitcoin you leave as collateral. So if you place a Bitcoin with us today, which is $100,000, you can take a $50,000 loan. Okay.
Okay.
And we can send you the dollar proceeds can be sent to you in fiat, in stable coins, in euros. The loan is denominated in US dollars because that's the currency we get our funding on, but we can disperse to you in any currency of choice, fiat, stables.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
tell us. As far as your Bitcoin, you transfer your Bitcoin to us, and in our most popular loan, which is our custody loan, the Bitcoin just sits in custody, as the name suggests. So your Bitcoin sits in qualified custodian, whether ourselves or one of our two banking partners, and you get the cash you need. Once you repay the loan, you get the Bitcoin back. Our loans, um, there's so many people around the world that need these loans. So, our loans start at $500. And we have people in places like Colombia or Mexico that take out, a couple $1,000s, some loans here and there to buy a computer, pay for living expenses, etc. But our loans also go up to $2.5 million, and you can have multiple loans. So we have people, very wealthy Bitcoiners in North America that use, multi-million-dollar loans to buy the house of their dreams or the ranch that they wanted. And the reason for this is that because our fiat system today does not recognize Bitcoin as an asset, at least from the bank's perspective. When many of my clients go to the bank and they have 10-20 million dollars worth of Bitcoin, and they want to buy the house that they want because they're having a second baby and they need a bigger place, and the bank says, where is your income, where's your tax filings? And their tax filings will show that because they are, you know self-employed, they don't have the reported
The
income
revenue stream, yeah.
that the bank needs. And many
I already had this issue with my banker actually that I wanted to buy a house that was bigger that
yeah.
my revenue stream, but I had enough assets to cover multiple times the house I was buying, but they couldn't give me a loan. So
And
the discussion I had with him, I remember, if I had like a $100 million house, you would not, and I have zero revenue, you would not lend me $100,000 with the 100 million house in collateral, because the logic behind it is that you need to have the revenue stream to be able to pay the debt, that the $100,000 debt. So either
so
you're renting the house or you're doing like something that gives you constant revenue. But when you talk about your business model, I mean, my first like red flag, I would go like, hold on, we've had these in the past, and we had the crypto winter, we had the Celsius that is now going to jail, we had like so many of these people that were lending. BlockFi also went bust, and so on. Um, what did you do differently that you're still in business?
great question. So the issues that these companies got themselves into were not because of what they were doing. Taking Bitcoin as collateral and lending you dollars and keeping that Bitcoin safe is a dead simple business. It's very, very simple. What these companies got in trouble with is that they were supporting assets that had no liquidity, that had no demand. They were introducing tokens to their business model that allowed them to play all sorts of shenanigans and financial engineering with the token that they could themselves print. They were participating in DeFi protocols for yield farming, like Terra Luna, which was what brought down Celsius and Three Arrows. And they never cared or thought to do things like proof of reserves or anything that would give clients accountability or assurance. So, important context, Ledn was in business during 2022. Ledn is as old as BlockFi, as old as Celsius, as old as these companies, but we navigated it and survived. And we, in fact, made a bid to acquire BlockFi when they had their Three Arrows hole. You can Google this, it's public information. And moreover, we refinance, I would argue, 65 to 70% of all Celsius loan clients out of bankruptcy. They decided to continue their loans that they had at Celsius with Ledn to come out of bankruptcy. And that, I think, is a big testament to our work.
Oh, wow.
Um, Ledn, uh, did not lose a sat or cent of client assets during 2022. We've been doing proof of reserves, since 2019, when people didn't think that stuff was cool. As other companies were bringing in, the latest token under the sun to increase their assets under management, we were bringing in accountants to look at our books and produce reports every 6 months, and we still do them today. Any one of our clients can go see them. So Ledn is and back then, actually, because we acted in the way we did, people made fun of us and called us the boring Canadians.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to list extra assets, because we were doing accounting instead of launching a new 10x leverage product. So Ledn has always operated in a very different way. Lending is older than money. Okay, there is no financial ecosystem without lending, and lending, as history has shown, can be done right. JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, they're not bulge bracket US banks because they are lenders. They are bulge bracket US banks because they've been lending for hundreds of years. And they've stood the test of time and done right by their clients for hundreds of years. And they've built this aura, this legend around their names that they've basically haven't failed in hundreds of years. And what makes you feel comfortable in many ways dealing with them. So we have always been fully committed to building this in an organic and sustainable way, in the way that we think should be done. And that has come with some headwinds when people thought we were slow and boring. But now it has come with a great deal of vindication, because all those players that were sponsoring stadiums and launching credit cards and doing things that we thought, we looked at ourselves saying, how are they paying these rates? How are they buying these stadiums? The math doesn't add up. We do this for a living. And to see them all fall like a house of cards, and we now have gone from being under the shadows of these dodgy giants, and now we are the leaders. If you ask most Bitcoiners today, where should I go if I need some lending solutions for my Bitcoin? They will say Ledn. And that is a position that we're going to cherish, and an opportunity that we're going to take all the way home.
Okay, you mentioned like all these big names in the crypto world, and you mentioned also the big names in the financial world. And for me, like lending, the second red flag I would say that comes up is licensing, because it is a very regulated business. The fact of lending, unless you're doing it like for a small bits and pieces, but the whole business of lending is very, very supervised in Western democracies. So how do you manage the licensing part and supervising this, and how does it work? Because there's like from my knowledge, basically, it is supervised first of all, so you don't have usury,
Yep.
because you have a lot of
Usury rates.
vulture type of lending, so giving like very high rates to very unsolvable clients. You have so the whole regulatory parts and the protection of the consumer. How do you manage with it?
Yes. So consumer lending is regulated in North America and in Canada on a state by state basis. And to your point, the main concern of the regulator is to protect the end user, to protect the consumer, in particular the small consumer. So um, the rules that we have to follow at all times are consumer protection, and we also have to follow anti-money laundering and know your client rules. So those are basically non-negotiables when it comes to lending, and we've been doing this for 6 years. We have a squeaky clean track record with all regulators globally, and that's for a good reason, because we are extremely diligent when it comes to the compliance of our products. So in the US, to give you an example, there are states that require lending licenses, there are states that don't require lending licenses. In the states that don't require lending licenses, we have to always make sure we're meeting consumer protections, usury thresholds, and all that work. In the states that do require lending licenses, we are going through the work to get those lending licenses, and until we have them, we basically, we won't lend into that market until we have the right structure to do so. So that's what we've been doing. In most countries, in fact, are, to your point, are welcoming of loans because you're bringing liquidity into the economy. So long as you're not doing it at a usurious rate, right? If you're bringing capital that is productive and can be put to work in your economy, they're going to be welcoming of that capital, so long as you are respecting consumer protections and you're doing it under usury. So, I am. I am hopeful that I think regulations will continue to clear up for these types of products. I think the world needs more clarity around these types of products. Citizens do. Right now, there hasn't really been an issue per se on the loans, as far as, if done correctly, the loans were not what brought down these other fraudulent players, right? It was a lot of the times it was their yield products where they were making unsecured
Mm,
loans to other counterparties. So it's not the loan. What brought down all these other fraudsters were the bells and whistles around the loans and their tokens, and the risks that they were taking on the back with the assets of their clients
of the
without
client.
disclosing those
No,
risks to the client. So it's
no,
a matter of unfair representation, or false representation. It's a matter, in many cases, of fraud. Yes, FTX was fraud, but so was Enron, so was Bernie Madoff. So,
no, no.
audited statements is not a catch-all for there won't be fraud, or regulated is not a catch-all for there won't be fraud. So the industry should be proactive about seeking this regulation, and I think we have. It's just we didn't have the right SEC. Now I think hopefully we do. And the other one is, um, bring justice when fraud did happen. So FTX, we know justice system is doing its work. Celsius, justice system is doing its work. They will be brought to justice, and the industry would basically rally around best practices. People have not stopped needing loans because BlockFi went down. People
No,
need loans more today than they did before. So
no.
the solution is not don't do it. The solution is find a way to do it sustainably.
Okay, and the third, I would say, argument that comes to my mind when I hear your business model is, if I have Bitcoin, okay, I can go and I wanna buy, like, if I have one Bitcoin and I need $50,000.
Yes.
Alternative, what I can do is I can go and sell the Bitcoin, and then with $50,000 buy my car or whatever I want to spend.
Hmm.
And with the other 50,000, I can go and buy a future on Bitcoin or a leverage position, 2 times leverage on Binance or Coinbase or the CME. Basically, you have stuff. So why? What's the difference between what I explained and what you're doing? Like, why would I go to Ledn instead of doing what I was suggesting?
Good question. So on your $50,000 sell, depending on your cost basis, you're going to have a significant amount of capital gains on that sale on the 50K. So you're going to get a tax bill for selling the 50 that you use to buy
Ah,
your
okay.
goods. Uh,
When you're lending, you're
you're
not
not
getting
selling.
the capital gain
Correct.
tax.
Correct. And you are then not
Yeah, I know. In France, for example, if you do it Bitcoin against USDT, for example, then you have zero tax because you're switching tokens basically.
correct, but when you trade the token for a real asset, there will be a taxable event there.
Yeah, when you
Uh,
sorry, that's true.
and I would argue that, again, I'm not a, you should consult with your tax professional, but I would argue that uh,
Okay,
Bitcoin to
so there are like
stables,
tax implications.
very real tax implications. Yes.
No.
You, on your solution, you are solving for the upside, so to maintain the potential on the upside, and you're taking a derivative on a platform, right? And so it wouldn't be too dissimilar to the risk you would be taking by keeping your Bitcoin at Ledn. You still have platform risk at Ledn, but I would say that if you are um, the one thing is, if you're doing this on a perp or a derivatives, most likely you're taking a variable rate on that levered long, and that variable rate can become very expensive depending on the funding environment of that position. Whereas with Ledn, you get a fixed rate for the 12-month period, so you
Yeah,
don't have to be
you
thinking
give
about.
12 months fixed rate.
We do, and no interest payments are required, so all fees
Oh
and interest
wow.
accrues until the
Okay.
day you
Yeah,
repay the
because the
loan.
rate on the derivatives fluctuates
Correct.
massively.
Correct. And that's what, again, Ledn is not built for a short term position. Ledn is built
What's your
for
current rate?
so we lend right now, our posted rates are 13.4 APR on standard loans, and 14.9 APR on our custody loans. And if you're
Okay.
looking to do deals over, a couple $1 million, we can bring this up to the desk and our institutional team, and hopefully improve on those rates a little bit. But the interest rate and the demand has been very, very high, and that has driven up the cost of capital. So in this environment, as you probably know, funding rates are high, dollars are in high
What if I
demand.
have dollars and I want to get returns on them backed by Bitcoin?
So we do that too. So you can deposit Bitcoins and or you can deposit both Bitcoin and stable coins with us to earn interest. The one you're referring to would be our stablecoin growth accounts. So right now those accounts are paying 7.5% on the first 100K and 9.5% on balances over 100K. And the reason
Oh
we pay that
wow,
nine
that
is because we're
beats
lending.
massively the fixed income rate basically.
Yeah, and I think that's where this industry is going. I think the banks and others are waking up, and I know because we're talking to them. They're waking up and they're seeing, how are you guys getting double-digit returns with zero loan losses and 2-to-1 collateral? Who, like, it almost looks too good to be true. And so I firmly believe that the rates for Bitcoin financing are going to significantly drop over the next few years as Wall Street learns that they can earn above treasury returns with near treasury security.
I mean, what's your worst case? Like your worst case scenario is Bitcoin dropping more than 50% without being able to liquidate it.
Correct.
Uh,
And so we also have a buffer on the liquidation thresholds to make sure that we never get close to 100% of the assets. So
yeah, you
the
can call back the money or liquidate before it gets to
correct. So
50%,
it's
right?
correct. So we liquidate at a loan to value ratio of 80%. So we liquidate
Yeah.
it when the value of your collateral is worth um, basically when the value of your loan is 80% of your collateral. So effectively, there's
Yeah,
still a
so to go
20%
back to the
buffer.
50% threshold protection, so you're like super protected.
Correct. And we close the loans outright. We don't do partial liquidations. We don't sell Bitcoin to bring it back to 50. We just sell to close the loan, and the whatever remaining balance is left in the collateral gets sent back to the client.
Okay, I got it. Wow, interesting business model. And so down the line, what do you think? Because today in real assets, okay, you cannot do that. And if we take the view that Bitcoin is going to go and eat all these assets, then there is a world where Bitcoin is like the main asset held by people, and it is an asset that is for the first time you can lend it to pay for stuff and to do stuff, because you're much better off lending it than selling it and missing all the potential. And what's like the crazy long-term view of how you're gonna change the world?
So the crazy long term view of how we're going to change the world is um, we're going to let the world short fiat with the best collateral asset in the world. So most Americans and Europeans have perpetuated their wealth over time by shorting their currency with a real asset on the back acting as the anchor. And they call this massive 5x short on the euro or 5x short on the dollar, they call them mortgages. Right. And a mortgage is nothing but a 5x short on the currency backed by an asset that is not being printed at the same velocity. So what's making you or make build wealth is not that your house is getting any better, it's not getting any bigger, it's not getting any newer. The unit you shorted, the units that you owe the bank are becoming less and less and less. And that's where your wealth is coming from. This vehicle of shorting fiat had only been available to Europeans, North Americans, because anybody trying to get a mortgage in Mexico or Argentina or anywhere in Southeast Asia will tell you it's a joke. Like, we don't get mortgages. But today, everyone can hold Bitcoin, get a loan against it in dollars, watch the dollars get devalued to infinity, and then benefit from this virtuous cycle of watching your collateral appreciate. So, for the first time in history, I don't know what other company can say what we can say, which is that I could lend to you. Jad, I can issue you a loan in Paris, and I could issue a loan to Ramiro in Brazil. Both of you will get the same interest rate, we'll get the money at the same time, and we'll have the same customer service. And that's the same from Zimbabwe to Florida. I don't think a single company in the world can say that other than Bitcoin backed lenders like us. And that to me is financial inclusion. That to me is putting a product that is sophisticated enough to be used by Michael Saylor in the hands of somebody that works at a hairdresser in Medellin. And so that's my crazy worldview. I think 80% of the Bitcoin in the world, or maybe 50 or 60, is going to have a loan attached to it. And when that happens, we are going to be, we're probably not going to be the only lenders, because people will figure out that this is a great business and there's going to be competition, but we're going to be squarely in that pie and leading it. If we have our way, we're going to be leading that pie.
Yeah, because basically you with the lending element, you bring like it's as if you were at the same time accelerating the fiat depreciation and
100%.
and you're diminishing the Bitcoin scarcity because there are going to be less sellers. Like we talk about all the people that lost their keys, and all the whales that haven't moved their coins, and all these big long-term hodlers. Like by giving the lending part, you can you can increase the number of hodlers basically because they're not going to sell the Bitcoins.
100%. I think one of my favorite descriptions of Ledn still comes from Preston Pish when we were chatting way back, and he was saying, "So you guys are basically, or you're basically the speculative attack company. Like you use Ledn to basically run shorts on fiat." And it's a speculative attack, right? Like it's Bitcoin speculative attacking the dollar, right? It's saying, give me more dollars to keep this Bitcoin, and by selling or by borrowing against, instead of selling it, I'm going to hoard hard assets, spend your weak money that you keep trying to get me to hold, and so you're, to your point, you are reinforcing this cycle that eventually lifts Bitcoin and pushes down the dollar.
Wow, interesting. Thanks very much for this insight. It was really mind blowing. Unfortunately, I have to wrap it up.
No problem.
Thanks you very much for joining the show, Mauricio, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Likewise,
I mean,
likewise.
you will hear from me soon because I'm interested.
And I'll see you in France. I think we're going to Paris Blockchain Week, so I'll let you know. We'd love to grab a coffee in person.
Perfect. Take care.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.